Gravediggers. I was 17 and had just gotten my license. Back in high school, my friends and I made it a mission to find abandoned houses to throw parties in. We had a good candidates, but the mother lode was this house I would pass on my way home from work. It was an undeveloped shell of a huge home with a large property in the back. I had told one of my friends about it, and one day we went to go see a movie. I took him to the house. It was about dusk in summer, so I had my headlights on. I pulled into the front of the house, and we were there for like 10 seconds tops before we pulled back to go to the main road. A minute later, this big truck pulls up behind us with its high beams on and right in our ass. My friend and I took note of it, but paid no mind as we headed back to the main road. At the light, I turned right, but the truck cut through the gas station at the corner and blocked us off. Out of the truck comes this huge looking man, and my friend and I were shitting our pants. He raps on the window and I roll it down. Now the really freaky part is that this is a busy road and there was no one in sight at this time. He asked us what we were doing at the house, and I quickly lied and said we were just making a U-turn. He stares at us for a few seconds, smiles, and sends us our way. To this day, the house remains unfinished, and I am convinced it is a drug operation of some sort.
"5 years ago, I was a senior in high school, on top of the world, thinking that nothing could touch me. You know the feeling as a kid when you were the oldest in the school and you and your friends thought everything was incredibly easy? This particular night, we found out that we were not invincible. In fact, we were the exact opposite. It was just another Friday night, and my friends and myself were up to our normal shenanigans. Movies, cards, board games, nothing too crazy. After the games had come to an end, we went back to the closet to find another thing to play with, when my friend Tom reached to the back of the closet and found an old Ouija board. As he pulled the box out and brushed off the dust that had accumulated over what must have been years, he glanced at us with this grin on his face. "Who's interested?" he asked. We all remained quiet as we surveyed the room, none of us wanting to be the one who was too scared to participate. Collectively, we all agreed that we would try it out, some of us more hesitant than others. As Tom set down the box, another friend said, "We should go to the cemetery to add to the experience." So we all loaded up the car and set out for the cemetery. Upon arrival, we were all a bit timid. There was an eerie fog that conveniently cast over the visible parts of the cemetery. We drove to the middle and broke out the board, none of us really knowing what to do. We all placed our fingers on the piece and began our questions. "Is there anyone here? How old are you? What was your profession? What is your name?" The questions went on and the answers were flowing. After several questions, we were able to put together that we were communicating with a man by the name of Greg, who was once a policeman that got tangled up with the wrong crowd when he was just 35 years old. Greg went on to tell us more and more, and at this point, we were all flabbergasted, and we began to accuse one another of moving the piece. In the midst of the accusations, a set of headlights pierced through the milky fog and sent all of our stomachs turning. We were speechless. As the car approached, we all looked at one another, not quite sure what to do. The car parked behind us, and a man exited and began walking towards us. I was in the back and looked out the rear window and noticed a light of lights on top of the car. Somewhat relieved, I blurted out that it was a cop. I say somewhat relieved because we were technically trespassing on a private property at 2 in the morning. The man approached the window and knocked with his flashlight. Tom, the driver, began lowering the window to speak with the officer. The gentleman began questioning us and asking what we were doing. We replied that we were simply messing around with a Ouija board and that we did not mean any harm. We told the officer that we would leave. To our surprise, he did not seem mad at all. He was concerned that we were either drinking or doing drugs, and when he saw that we were not, he seemed at ease. He simply told us that we could not be here past dark and that we had to leave. Everyone was relieved but me. I sat in the back seat unable to talk. The officer walked away, and the rest of my friends let out a sigh of relief. When I was finally able to form words, I uttered the question, "Someone tell me they saw his name badge." They all replied, "No, why does it matter?" I shuddered again and said, "His name was Greg." Tom immediately started the car and followed after the cop, and was able to flag him down right before we exited the cemetery. We rolled down the window trying to think of an excuse to get his name and prove that I was not crazy. The others were all quiet when I spoke up from the back. "Thanks for being easy on us, officer." Then I paused, waiting for him to fill in his name. "Greg," he said. "Don't worry about it. I was a kid like you once." After that, he rolled up his window and drove off. The car was quiet until I spoke up. "I told you guys!" I exclaimed. Everyone was shaking. Everyone was talking about this and that and all their different theories the whole ride home. Once we got back to Tom's house, we went on the local sheriff website to try to find our friend Greg. We looked at pictures of all different officers, and there was nobody by the name of Greg. We were all scared, hearing things that was probably just our minds playing tricks on us. All of our hearts beating wildly as we sat in the basement talking about what exactly happened. Whether you believe in the Ouija boards or not, what happened that night will stick with each and every one of us.